everybody. Welcome to our virtual group. This is a combined group for Essentials and Optifast. Please take a second as everybody's getting logged in to look over the tips. Be sure you logged in with your first name. We use a chat box to interact with each other, so you can feel free to type in there. We do record our virtual classes, so we will make sure that your names are anonymous for anything that you do type in, so they will not be associated with your name. If you want to get credit for Perka points for attending this group, be sure that you complete the confidential online survey at the end of class, and you'll be redirected to that. And so we use that information in order to make sure that that you're able to get your Perka points, and you can stop by the nutrition shop and pick those up anytime. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'll leave this up for a little bit. We're going to be talking about personal responsibility today. Is everyone able to hear me okay? Awesome. Thanks, guys. See about getting this loaded. Okay. All right, everybody. So, like I said, this is the Optifast and Essentials virtual group, and we're going to be talking about personal responsibility today in relation to that, and how knowing what to do and actually doing it, how we can kind of connect those things together a little bit. So I want you guys, as we go through this, to really comment if you have any thoughts or questions along the way. I'll do my best to kind of check in on the comment box as I can. And also, I'll be asking you questions. So one of the things that is really important, I think, is to be able to connect to this personally if you can, ask the hard questions, talk with each other if you need to, and we'll go from there. So who can tell me what personal responsibility is? What does it make you think of anyways? Like, what does it make you, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about personal responsibility? Owning up to my actions. Okay. Anybody have anything else? Self-accountability, doing the things that are going to make me succeed. Okay. I love these. We're going to talk more about how personal responsibility really connects to success with the weight management program. Think about what works for me first and foremost. Okay, so a really personalized response. So there are some handouts down here at the bottom that you're able to do, the time and values handout, and we'll get to that at the very end of this group. And then a personal responsibility handout that is going to talk about the details of the same things we're going to be discussing. So make sure you check that out. So first thing is taking control and empowering yourself. So oftentimes people will come into the new patient clinic visit and say, okay, so I know what to do, I need help doing it. I don't know why I'm not doing it. And so this is supposed to help answer some of those things. Or you get started in a program and things are going well and you hit this place and you're thinking, okay, why am I not losing weight? Well, I know what to do. So it can happen at multiple times throughout the program. Most dieters attempt weight loss 5 times before they're actually successful. Have any of you ever tried to lose weight before starting this program? Multiple times. Yes. Okay. I would say that's primarily the answer we get to that, is that most of the time when people come here, they've tried multiple different options before. Or I've heard people say, how much weight have you lost before? And they'll say, well, hundreds of pounds, I just keep putting it back on, you know? So you've been able to lose weight, but we're going to continue to keep trying until the successful part of maintaining what we have lost sticks. So weight loss is not just about knowing information, or else we probably wouldn't need a weight management center, right? We can get information really anywhere. It's about taking responsibility for what you're doing with that information. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So taking responsibility for not only our own thoughts and our behaviors, but then what actions are we putting in place? And I think I heard somebody, or read that somebody mentioned owning up to your own actions. So being real with yourself. That's going to be able to take a really open and genuine and vulnerable look at what's going on. And that can be super, super scary. But the key is to really recognize and understand your own beliefs and thoughts, how they affect your behavior. So I really think the very first place to start is being able to even acknowledge that behavior and thoughts and emotions are really going to impact your weight loss program. Was anybody really surprised when they found out that a behaviorist, that therapists were involved in this program, or was it something that you expected? Not surprised. Okay. Surprised at first, expected it, glad to see it, expected it. Okay, so you had heard about it. You'd heard about the behaviorist. Yeah, so some people are, that's one of the factors that helps them choose this program. Other people were kind of surprised, and some people are even really can be resistant to the idea that my thoughts and emotions impact relationship with food, relationship with the scale, body image, and weight loss and weight maintenance. And at the end of the day, every person, regardless of how much weight they have to lose or what they want to maintain, our thoughts and our behaviors can impact that. So taking a real look at what's going on with you and how you are responsible for some of those choices is really going to help set you up and help you be ready for the continued process of weight loss and weight maintenance. So at the end of the day, you only can control you. So being real with you is the first best thing you can do. So if you haven't done that yet, if you haven't really challenged your thoughts, I suggest that you start there and give yourself some grace, knowing that can be pretty scary, but it's going to be really important to do. Okay. Oh, somebody said they were truthfully thought they did not need that part and they were wrong. You know, a lot of people think that. A lot of people, I don't want to go to those appointments, or I don't need that, or I don't need this. And part of it is because I believe, well, I'll ask you guys, why do you think some people may believe that? Or if you don't mind sharing, why did you believe that you didn't need to think about your thoughts and your emotions? They don't want to share the personal information. True. I know I need it because I tend to be an emotional eater. So you have the awareness already. So then the opposite, considered myself emotionally strong. And I think that thank you for your honesty, first of all. I think that's common, right? We pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We just do what needs to be done, right? We hold ourselves to these expectations, but there's more to that. So again, at the end of the day, we've got to take a really good look at us and be honest and vulnerable with ourselves. So thank you, guys. So locus of control, this is a huge part of this. So I think, take a look at this diagram and, oh, sorry, something's going on with my computer. There we go. Take a look at this diagram and figure out which one do you consider yourself being on the side of, internal or external? If you don't have to answer if you're uncomfortable, but internal, internal, internal. Got a lot of people with that internal control. Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you do both, but you focus on the internal. So I think this is a really fun line. And this is kind of a ambiguous topic because when we're thinking about personal responsibility, we want to make sure that our locus of control is internal because that is where we actually have control. If we always put control externally, so they did this, that happened, I'm not in charge of my timing, I'm too overworked, I'm blah, 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 we could go on and on, then that means we're out of control. What we're saying there is everything else is happening to me because, and that means I can't be successful, right? It's kind of like, it can be this like, it can feel victimizing a little bit. It can feel that we're not able to climb out of the hole that we're in. Versus internal, when we're talking about personal responsibility, is being able to say, you know what, maybe I am overworked. Maybe my boss does expect way too much. But at the end of the day, I'm in control of my choices. I'm in control of what I do with that. I'm in control of how I think about that. I'm in control of what I want to change. Somebody said internal with a lot of justification for bad choices. Okay, so what I'm hearing there, and I could be wrong in this specific situation, but often what I hear is taking it to the other extreme. So being able to have, or having such an intense internal locus of control that we can't get out of that space either, and that's not healthy. So we don't want to stay so focused on I make things happen, it's all about me, yada yada yada, that then we get into a really negative headspace, because then what happens if we have an off-plan choice? Am I making sense to everybody about that? So we want to have an internal locus of control so that we can actually feel in control of certain choices. However, if we make an off-plan choice, or if something's going on to where it didn't go as planned, even though we can take control of some of that, we don't want to get into this place of self-pity and some really negative thinking patterns. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, good. So it's a really fun line about being able to take responsibility and also give yourself some grace. And I think both of those things can be really challenging for certain people, and then finding the right balance of that's going to lead to weight loss. It can be challenging, right? Has there ever been a time where you guys have felt like you've been able to kind of focus externally, or you've had to focus externally, maybe for some off-plan things? Anybody have an example of that? I gave the one about overworking with a boss, but does anybody else have another one? Holidays, stressful, all kind of excuses. Okay. Vacations, family events with foods pushed. Oh, that's a good one. Potluck at Labor Day party. Yeah, I like all of them, but one I think too is, well, Grandma made it. Like Grandma made it, and just have to eat it because she made it. Or I'm gonna try and scroll back up to see the other ones where I guess I can make this a little bit bigger. Here we go. Holidays, stressful days, all kinds of excuses. Yeah, like we have to go to my husband's family's house, and they always have this, and this to eat. What would be an example of taking those same situations you just listed and stating them in a way that is really focusing on an internal locus of control? You guys are typing a lot. That's great. I can make choices about what I choose to eat and how much, as well as what I don't eat. Yeah. We've got another strategy, planning for those situations. Yeah. So yes, I have this event, but I'm in control of how I prepare. Those are great. I'm responsible for what I put in my mouth and for my weight loss success. Where can I say no to certain things? I love that. That's that internal locus, but also kind of moderate. I like that approach. Plan ahead, stick with it, or prepare to have a taste of something. Remind yourself how good you will feel in control of your actions. Perfect. These are great, you guys. Thank you for sharing. I love you, but I really don't want banana pudding. That's perfect. That's perfect, right? Especially when it's a family member, and oftentimes, that was a good one. Oftentimes when someone dies, food's brought. When someone is married, food's brought. When there's a baby, there's food. I mean, it's constant. And a lot of times it's how people express love. Not always, but it can be, right? You think about it, that comfort food, that love food, but being able to say, yeah, Granny, I love you, but I don't want banana pudding today. And I love how you said I don't want instead of I can't have, right? Because I can't have means what? That somebody else is in control of what you're getting to choose to eat. And at the end of the day, even though we've given you this prescriptive diet program or nutrition program of what specifically you need to eat, you are in control of what you put in your mouth. So with that being said, it's not that you can't have banana pudding, but it's exactly like you said, I don't want it, right? And you may want it, but you're making the choice not to have it. Those are great examples, everybody. Okay, now I've lost the button on how to switch. Let me pull this back down and see if it pops up. There it is. Even though I love these virtual groups, I'm not very virtual handy. Okay, so there's only one corner of the universe you can be certain of improving, and that's your own self. How are some examples of how you guys are making sure that you are focusing on you? Because that's really hard at times, to be able to focus on just us. Making time to go to the gym. I like how you said making. A lot of times people will say, and myself included, finding time. Well, we could look for a really long time and not find any. I can find time to do other things, but oftentimes we have to make time to fit it in. That's great. Setting aside every day to journal. Yes. Because that's something that's just about you. That's time for self-reflection. Regular exercise classes at 4:30, so you have to leave work. So you've planned it ahead. You've planned it ahead in your day, and that's the expectation that you're going to be leaving work at 4:30. Perfect. Because at the end of the day, we cannot control anybody else. We'd like to think we can, right? We can't control other people's choices. We can't control their emotions. We can't control their thoughts. All we can control is us. So why not put the energy into what we can control, right? And kind of let go of the other things that we may not be able to control as much. Okay, so externalizing blame and making excuses. I don't know if any of you have kids, but when I think about this is when I think about this, right? Like playing the blame game, you're tattling. I'm reading a book right now with my kid on what tattling looks like and when it's okay to tell somebody and when it's not, and all of that. But we do this as adults. It's not just kids. We do it all the time. Only if, but you did this. And it's all about not taking responsibility for our actions. And it can be really hard, and I've used this word a bunch today, but really vulnerable to be able to say, to take responsibility for something that you may not want to take responsibility for. And I think that we all do this at certain times and may not even be aware of it. So it's often easier to recognize when someone else is playing the blame game than seeing it in ourselves, but we have to see it in ourselves. In order to be able to shift it or change it, we have to be able to identify it. So who are you blaming? Who have you blamed for an off-plan choice before? And it may not be that you're blaming them every day, but yourself. I mean, outside of yourself, though. Externalizing. Have you ever blamed your spouse, your kid, your parent, your husband? Yep. Yep. And friends, that's a good one. It totally happens, and we do it. We have to kind of dig down deep and to see what's going on under that layer. Why am I not accepting responsibility for this? Does anybody kind of have a reason why they think they may not want to accept responsibility? Maybe in just a general situation. Denial. Yeah. If we don't accept responsibility, it means we weren't in control, right? So it was outside of us. We didn't, because in the long run, I know it's my fault and I feel bad about my poor decision. So you don't want to acknowledge it. Maybe that's what you're trying to say. Yeah. It's so much easier for it to be outside of us than inside of us, because that forces us to get real. But is externalizing blame and making excuses going to be the answer to off-plan choices? Is that going to be is that going to help you with weight loss and weight management? Mm-mm. Right. Yep. You said clearly it hasn't worked. It is an ongoing struggle. It totally is. And it, again, like I said, I think it's a really fine balance, because are there certain things that are going to happen that are completely outside of your control? Yes. That's life. Okay? There's things that I've heard from people: job loss, death in the family, medical diagnosis, mental health crisis. There's so many things that can be considered external that can impact your ability to stay on plan. However, again, finding that balance of being able to say, yes, losing my job does impact me. Yes, the death in the family can impact me. But what's something we can do to kind of gain back some of that internal control, that locus of control? One of the things that I like to tell people to do is to say, okay, I can't control this. What is one thing I can do today to help me get closer to my goal? One thing, right? That forces us to kind of think in the gray and not think it's either all or nothing. So maybe my timing was off. Maybe I went 5 hours instead of the 3. Well, what can I do right now that can help get me back on track? Okay. All right, let's look at some other strategies. So how do I take control of my choices? Problem solve. Challenge yourself to think about solutions to your problem rather than excuses. Kind of like what we just talked about. So what are some challenges some really specific challenges that you guys have had, or that you think are upcoming that you may have? Yes, that's a very specific one. A trip to Italy for 10 days. We tailgate, and there's always so much food and alcohol. Birthdays. So the key here is that I wanted to point out, it took y'all no time to come up with something that could impact your plan, right? Because we're surrounded by it. We're surrounded socially. There's food. We have to eat to survive, right? We have to fuel our body, and it's everywhere. And so now let's figure this out. What are some strategies that could be a solution to this, right? Lots of you are typing. Good. And maybe you've navigated this beautifully before. Okay, so somebody said taking shakes with me everywhere. Yes, staying prepared. That's in your control. Making healthier treats to tailgate. Yes, that's in your control. Meet with a nutritionist before trip. Perfect. That's something that's in your control. View your plan as new and exciting journey in your life. I love that you're working on changing thoughts. Your thoughts are in control more than we think they are. Mindfulness, and that's not easy. You're right. You're right. Eating on plan prior to event to curb hunger. Looking at menus while away. These problem-solving skills are beautiful, you guys. These are great. Great, great, great. And those are all things that you have control of. I'm going to say that like 100 million times today. They're things that you have control of, and that can help feel empowering, right? And then that feels good. Okay, so recognize and release. I think it's super important to realize that there's this natural grief of anytime there's a change in relationship, and everybody has a relationship with food, because there's not one person in this entire world that, well, I shouldn't say it like that. There are not anybody I've ever met that has only eaten food just for fuel, right? Forever. So at some point or another, there has been a secondary gain for food other than fuel. So think about it. Think about how food may have played a different, and this slide right here talks about secondary gain. I like to think of it kind of like a role, right? What role did food play for you before? And it's kind of odd to think about it because we may not have thought about it at all. But this is really, really challenging, and love and comfort. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. Love, comfort, companionship. I've heard companionship before. Can be a way of distracting you from doing something that needs to be done that you don't want to do. It can be avoiding relationship or sexual intimacy. It can be a mood stabilizer, right? There's so many different roles that food can play, that as we are taking control and as we're asking you to shift your relationship with food, to recognize the impact that has on you. Recognize that there is some natural grief in the changes that you have to make. Anytime there is a change, there's going to be some kind of loss. That's just truth, right? So being able to decide how the other needs, the role that food was playing, can be met for you. Okay? This is something that over a virtual group and over in a group setting in general is something that's pretty difficult to talk about. But if this is something that you kind of are feeling like in your gut a little bit, or are not quite sure you understand what I'm talking about, discuss this with your behaviorist or other team members a little bit, because this can be really, really challenging, but it's one of the keys to being able to having a lifelong change in your relationship with food, okay? Okay. Let's look. Okay, tools for building self-responsibility. So, assertiveness. How is assertiveness different than aggressiveness? Yes, you can be assertive without being aggressive. So give me some, how would you describe aggressive? Okay, negative. Yeah. I maybe think of it as being like loud, maybe obnoxious, mean. Anything else you guys can think of? Forceful, yeah. Do any of you have trouble being assertive, which you can see kind of what we mean there, and thinking that it sounds aggressive? Yeah. Assertiveness is hard. Assertiveness relates to me, but being aggressive focuses on the other person taking me out of control. I like that. It's about that control again. So assertiveness is a great place to start when learning to take responsibility, because it forces you to think about you and what you are in control of. And not only that, but it allows you to a specific skill so that you can kind of set boundaries for yourself that you need to in personal responsibility. So being direct and firm. What that means is saying what you mean and meaning what you say. It's not passive aggressive, or it's not passive. It's not, it's direct. You say exactly what you mean. Okay. Use I statements instead of you statements. When we use you statements, that immediately makes people think there's blame, which we want to avoid blame when we're being assertive as well. And so using I statements, making sure to avoid blame. So we have to not only check in with ourselves to say, okay, am I taking responsibility for this, or am I blaming somebody? Speak with your words and with your body. And so being able to be assertive, standing up strong, eye contact, being able to show somebody that I'm serious about what I'm saying. Okay? Practice in advance. This one people, I think, don't often think about doing, even if they practice assertiveness. But it can be really important, especially in a heated situation or an emotionally heightened situation. So yeah. And then the last one's probably my favorite. No is a sentence. How many of you, when you're asked to do something and you want to say no and you decide to say no, feel like you have to give an explanation? Yep. It's like ingrained, right? No, I'm so sorry. No, I can't really do that. I've got to do this. Oh, there's somebody that doesn't. Great, 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 great. We need to work as a society as a whole, but especially people that are trying to work on assertiveness, being able to say no, no, thank you. I think this is something that's learned. I think a lot of times people that struggle with saying no may have grown up in a home or seen other people who struggle to say no. And so being able to work towards saying no. I actually gave somebody the homework the other day that they had to say no 10 times before they saw me again, because we don't say no. And when we don't say no, that typically, and I'm speaking very generally here, but if we don't say no to people, then that can sometimes really impact and bring in so many other external factors into our life that it's easier to have an external locus of control, right? So if you're somebody that struggles with saying no, I challenge you to say no to something or somebody today. And it can be done in a direct, firm, and positive way. It doesn't mean it's necessarily aggressive, right? Okay, time management. You do have the time. You just have to find ways to better prioritize your health. So when we say I don't have time for that, or I don't have time for this, if you really sat down and did an audit of your time, how much time you're on social media, watching the news, talking to somebody, sitting, sleeping, which you probably need more of that. But if you really sit down and do the time audit, we do have time. We make time for things that are important to us at the end of the day. Okay? Make sure that within your time management plan, you build a routine, you build a framework that fits into your self-care, your meal planning, exercise. How can this all fit in? Plan it just like you would a meeting with your boss, right? And instead of letting things fall off the plate when things get too full and it just kind of going to the wayside, let some stuff go. Delegate and reprioritize. And I think that can be really challenging for people too. But it's really important to understand that we need help. All of us need help. So what can you delegate to somebody else? What can you kind of tag somebody else in to take over? And how can you reprioritize what's important so that you can get to your goal? Okay? The next part, I want you to go ahead, if you can, to bring out a sheet of paper and a pen. And if you're on the phone or not able to do this, or you're sitting in your car, totally okay. Take a look at it, review it, and then it's actually one of the handouts in the file section, so you'll be able to do it later. But we're going to flip over. Is that too little? Are y'all able to see that? There's some yes and some no's. I'm going to try and make it a little bit bigger. Ooh. Okay. We'll leave it there. I'll read it to you guys. So it's really important, and I think this is a really cool exercise, because sometimes when we're having trouble prioritizing the behaviors that we need in order to lose weight, it goes right back to values, right? And this is how, connecting this back to where we talked about knowing what to do and actually doing it, this is a great way to kind of see why that's happening and then what we need to shift. So when you look at this, value is what gives our life meaning. People claim, we have different values. And we live our life, typically, depending on what's important to us. Okay? So here's some values. And so what you would do, and we may not have time to do this all, but you can kind of look at it, is rank these areas in value order, 1 to 18, and they're in random. So you would just put, like, in that first column under importance, what's number 1. So let's say, I'm looking. Okay, so family. A lot of people may put family here. A lot of people may put spirituality, religion, all of that on here. So I want you to rank this 1 to 18. And then the next thing to do is to look at how much time, energy you're putting to support that value. Okay? So you would say, I'm putting in a lot of time and energy there. So that would be high, moderate, or low. So that's what you would fill out in the time and energy. So how much time, so like hours in a day, and energy, that can be physical or mental or emotional energy that you're investing into that particular value. So when you look at that, circle the values you rate high on importance. So I would say, like 1 to 5 or 6 maybe. And then high on time and energy investment. And then mark the values you rate high on importance and low. And then kind of compare all of this together, because we can find a couple different things. We can find that we're emotionally tanked because what's taking the most time and energy from us is at the bottom of our value list. Does that make sense? So, or we can find what is something we completely value, and spending a lot of time there is something that has a ton of barriers for your plan. What if your biggest and most important value is family? And that's where you spend a lot of your time, is with your family. And what if every person in your family but you is not watching what they eat? They don't care about exercise. That can show you exactly why what you know to do is not always matched up to what you're doing. Now, saying it's your family's fault would be an external locus of control, right? The blame game. But being able to say, okay, here's my circumstance. What am I in control of? That is being able to take responsibility for your actions and being able to shift that. It's easier to go along with everyone else who doesn't say on plan. Yes. especially when it's something you value. Okay? If it's a side of the family that you don't value, it happens, right? If you're visiting with somebody that they're not high on your priority list, high on your value list, it's not going to matter to you probably whether you are doing the same thing they're doing. So I really challenge each of you to do this values and time exercise. Complete it. See where your energy is going. Is it where you value? And then take a look at those values and see, is this where most of my barriers are for my weight loss program? If so, get with your behaviorist and develop a plan, right? Be assertive. And my guess is if you value that thing or those people as much as you do, they probably value you too. So being assertive with them is going to really help set you up for taking ownership, personal responsibility, and for seeing some results. So we're finishing up a little early today, so I'm going to take a second to open up for any comments or questions or anything based on what we've covered today, or really anything else for that matter. While you guys are typing that, I'll just briefly mention at the end of the meeting today, you'll see a link that'll take you to the survey. And by completing that survey, you'll be able to get a Perk a Point at the nutrition shop. If you don't know what Perk a Point is, swing by the nutrition shop and ask. It's a really awesome positive reinforcement for people to get some extra points for doing the day-to-day behaviors that we want you to do and for coming to group. So doesn't look like anybody's typing any questions, so we're going to go ahead and end group for today. Thank you guys for your participation. It was wonderful. And, thank you. You're welcome, everybody. I'll end the meeting, and I'll see you guys soon.